Good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome to another episode of I Cannot Believe That We Got Up This Early. And maybe for some of you, hopefully, this will be did I shave my legs for this? Anyways, but yes, good morning, everyone. And I want to welcome you to another episode of First Light, where weekly on Thursday morning we set the alarm a little bit earlier and we just kind of spend some time together and we talk about issues of faith, which is a bit of a common theme that we're going to have today, talking about that idea. But I want to welcome you, and as always, I always encourage you, throw your name in the comment section and say hi. I guess you don't have to throw your name in, it already comes up, but say hi in the comment section, just like Linda has done. Good morning, Linda. And Linda heads up our prayer ministry at First Ave. And so we're so glad to have you with us. And also, just always, if you're not in the Chilliwack area, we want to welcome you and just tell us where you're from. And that's good for everyone to know too, because this really is a discussion that in many ways takes almost a week to do, because we have people joining us from different time zones. We have people joining us from different times. And good morning, Dina, and to be able to chat about these things. And so I just so you know, put your name, say hi in the comment section, even if it's later on. I love to go back and read the comments that are taking place, as I encourage you to do the same as well. Also in the comment section here, do me a favor and write down an answered prayer that's happened recently. Like, let's let this kind of comment section be a time where we can just testify that God still answers prayer. So throw in the comment section an answered prayer, and that would be great for Good Morning Richard and Laura as well. And I know that there are others joining us, and as I said, there'll be people joining us later. I want to say hi to the lurkers, and I don't say that out of disrespect, but I know that there's some people watching, and we're not telling anybody that we're watching. Maybe because you're still too tired, maybe because you are so tired you can't even press keys on the keyboard, and that's cool. Maybe you're getting ready for work. I don't know what it is, but I want to welcome you as well as you are joining us. Good morning, Anne, and coming to us. Where exactly? Like, what's the nearest place? I think I know what it is, but the nearest place that you live. I believe you're in the Kamloops area. But anyways, I just love the fact that we've got people from all over here. Good morning, Doug and Tracy, and I see Bobby and Sally. No, okay, they're not in the room. But anyways, I love this. And also, I will say this. There are some people that are regulars, and that's great. And I'm so glad you're here, because you are this like staple to what's going on here as we continue on. And but also a shout out to the people that aren't on every week, and those who are new with us too. I love that. I love that we're able to just kind of be in this community together and just truly encourage each other. I'm not going to mention who it is, but I'm looking at this list of people that are on right now, and I just think of how much you've been an encouragement to me as of late. And so we really are encouraging one another, iron sharpening iron, the Bible talks about. See, 15 minutes out of Penticton. See? Okay, so this is why I really should be quiet and let people answer their questions first. So anyways, it's great having you, Anne, with us. And my prayer is that you are spared of the fires this year. And my daughter and granddaughter just left yesterday, and it was interesting because we were having this conversation, and she was like, is there always a fire season here? And I'm like, apparently, so the people in the center of the universe, we really don't know all the things that are happening there. So look at that. Rosanna and buongiorno, come stai? Okay, so anyways, we have Rosanna. I don't know if Sab is with you as well. And I felt like I gave Sab a bit of a ribbing last week. But anyways, no, they're the dearest people, dearest friends. Miss them tons. And so, but I'm glad that you can join with us now. I thought, honestly, this was not planned. As you know, I like to kind of have a coffee mug of the day, and so I was reaching in there today. I was like, well, what am I going to use today? And I'm like, way in the back, I'm like, oh, what's that mug? I pull this out, and ironically, this mug is probably not the first choice I would go with, but anyways, it says, "For we live by faith and not by sight." 2 Corinthians 5:7, and I was like, "Okay, God, thank you. We're going to be talking about faith today, so just kind of a shout out. So if you think that God is anti-coffee, take it up with him. He got me the right mug, so." Anyways, good morning, Brenda. And so it's good to be joining with you. And as always, you can always go back and watch the other segments that we do. We do this every Thursday. We started last January, so we've been going since last January. So yeah, that's quite a few. And so this year in 2022, we have been going through this kind of this modeled season of our vision statement, which is to be pursuing the person and the presence of God in us, through us, and around us. And so we're taking this year to kind of in segments, and what I'm calling seasons, 3 seasons, to go through this idea of what does it look like for God working in us. It's great to have a vision statement, and every church has their own vision statement, and I love that because every church sees their own purpose and what God is calling them to. And so our vision is to be pursuing the person and presence of God in us, through us, and around us. We are a body of believers, which really means that it's not really the church solely, but really it's something as individuals we collectively agree upon. And so how is it that we can have God working in us, which we did until like April, talking about that, so you can go there. And then now we're in this season of through us. And so right now we're in this through us season, and we're looking at this 2 Timothy 4:12, and that's this 5 weeks. We're kind of hanging in this. Okay, hold on here. I got to read this. Okay, so answer prayer. Several people have safely recovered from sicknesses lately. Yes, awesome. I love that. That's powerful. That's powerful. Dina, a miracle. A sweet newborn was sent home from the NCU after being there a week. Love this stuff. Like, that's the testimonies of what God is doing. And it's not was doing. And I don't see here anything saying, in 1969, I heard a rumor. No, this is what God is doing now. And so we want to testify that, and we want to give God praise for that. That's awesome. And so we're talking about this idea of being an example for the believers, okay? For the believers here. And in 5 areas right now, in speech and life and love and faith and purity. I want to say this. As I was preparing today, I wanted to read something about, and I talked about this in the first week, of this series on example, but I don't know why, I just feel today we need to circle back on it. So let's just pray here for a second. So God, I just ask that over these next few moments together, as we breathe together for literally like the smallest percentage of time in our day. Lord, I just ask that you would be with us today. God, I pray that you would guide our words, guide our conversation, guide this discussion, Lord, so that whether we're on now or later, that this would be what that person needs or what we need today to be able to get through the rest of the day. Thank you for your call to faith. God, your faith even in us. And so we just ask your blessing in your name. Amen. All right, so you understand in a moment what I'm talking about with God's faith in us, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to hone in on something. I don't know who this is for, and so I pray this is for you today. But when it says this thing, don't let anyone look down on you because you were young, but set an example for the believers in speech, life, love, faith, and purity. The word "look down on you" can be translated, I guess, in 2021 language, belittle you. I don't know why, but as I was just kind of reflecting on that, I was preparing, I just really felt in my heart that some of you, that term, to be belittled, means something. And so I wanted to use that and use this as an opportunity to just speak into your life. Don't let others belittle you, okay? Because you're young, or because you're inexperienced, or because of whatever it is that you feel you're lacking. That's what God is saying, that you don't have to feel belittled because of what someone else thinks they're belotted of, okay, or they be bigged of, okay? So just want to speak that out there right now. Okay, so this idea of setting an example for the believers, okay? Remember this. This is about inspiring others, not instructing them. Okay, I think the church messed up for a while where we felt as though we needed to teach everything. So this is about inspiring others. This is being an example for them, okay? Remember, Jesus, remember this, and you may want to put this in the chat room or whatever in your notes, that Jesus may have taught those who listened, okay? But he used those who followed. I thought about that as I was preparing. He taught those who listened, and John 6:66 is probably one of the it's a tough verse because it's like after this harsh word, then many believers left. And and that actually made Jesus pose a question. Basically, and I was thinking of, would this be the question I do in my Sunday series, the coolest questions that Jesus ever asked? But he said, are you going to leave as well, right? So this idea here that when we look at this, that we're to inspire people. He taught a lot of people, a lot of things, and that's why we have the Bible, and it's scribed down, and I thank God for that. But he used those who followed him. He used them. I want to be used by God. My prayer is that these times, it's kind of like a Wednesday night Bible study, but we do it early in the morning. You know, it's these times, I don't want to just instruct you. I want to inspire you. I don't want to just tell you God's word. I want to live God's word. I want to be an example to those around us, okay? Because he says this, set an example, okay? So that's kind of, I know it's my goodness, it's 22 already, and I'm still not near my notes. So the idea to be an example, remember we talked about this, the original, the form, okay? And in your speech, so in what you say, in your life, in what you do, okay? In your love, we looked at that last week, in your love. And so I wonder how that went for you guys, like saying with this idea of what would love have me do in this situation. That was tough for me because I'll be honest, there was a couple of times where I would be like, well, what would love do in this situation? And I was like, I don't want to ask that question right now because love is sacrificial. Love has no strings attached, right? It's this selfless thing. We were talking about that last week. So what would love? So really how we care. It's not how we act. It's how we care. Love is an action verb, okay? But now we're in this fourth section and segment called set an example for the believers in faith, okay? In faith, okay? In what you believe, okay? Better, it's better to say how you believe. I know we've been saying what you say, what you do, and how you care, but how you believe, okay? Because remember, this is not the context of just God working in you. It's God work in us to be through us, okay? So it's not only just for you, it really should be about how your faith will not instruct others, but inspire others, okay? So as I drink a sip of my faith cup here today, I want to be able to say, what, I just noticed this is falling down. Carrie likes to have these like, I don't know, these I almost feel like we're at a chalet all the time, at all these blankets and that. They're comfort to her. Anyways, so what faith is? Faith is, in the Greek, the word for faith is a word called peitho, okay? Peitho. And so it means this. It means to be persuaded, okay? Faith is not about belief so much as to be persuaded to believe. It's about the persuasion process. So here, and I said this a little earlier, I don't know if you caught that there, but I said this, okay, here it's I love that, God working in us so that he can work through us. Yes, man, that's so true. It's true. We're not the end result. We're not the end of the line. It's supposed to keep going through. So who is persuading who? We're talking about being an example in our faith, but who is being persuaded? We're being persuaded. So who is persuading? It's God who is persuading. This is where it's going to get a little messed up. So faith is actually being persuaded by God. Having faith, us having faith, is actually the successful transaction of us being persuaded by God. So the burden, this is going to sound so, trust me, I know it's like early, but hear me here. Because I don't know if you've ever heard this preached, which anytime a preacher says that, red flags. But honestly, just stick with me for a second here. Stick with me. That the burden of faith is on God then. The burden of faith is actually on God to persuade us. Now, get this. It's not like, well, I don't have enough faith, so God failed. No. Hear me out on this. You're going to understand why this is so important. The burden of faith is on God to successfully be persuadable. Okay? His objective is not to convince us. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about persuasion. So in order to persuade, let's say a salesman or something like that, their object here is to persuade you to buy something. How do they do that? Well, they can do that like immorally and unethically and say, oh, it's a great car. Right. But no, if the car stands up for itself, then the persuasion is really simple. Let the car speak for itself. Let the whatever speak for itself. We bought a Dyson once and we saw the guy picking up all the stuff. Okay, oh great. Well, it speaks for itself, right? So the persuasion, the emphasis of the need for God to, or the act of God persuading us is more hinged on, is he persuadable? Does he have the nature that is persuasive, that we would actually believe it? So faith is actually God's divine persuasion, okay? We're all going to believe in something. I was talking to a couple yesterday, and I think their grandparents, one was a Christian, like devout Christian, and one was a devout atheist. I was like, okay, you wonder what Thanksgiving dinner was like for Grace. So they have faith. One believes totally, wholeheartedly that there is a God. One believes wholeheartedly that there isn't a God. It's still faith. It's still because there's uncertainty, so now you go based on merit, facts, whatever, nature, all of that. So God, the burden of proof is on God and his nature, and that's the beautiful thing about God, is that he doesn't change. His nature is consistent. When we look around us, Romans itself says, all you need to do is look at creation, and you can be, it's not the words he used, but you get this, you can be persuaded easily that there is a God. So true faith, okay, actually I'm getting ahead of myself. It's basically when we say, trust me. That's what God's saying, trust me, right? We trust someone until they are no longer worthy of trust, right? So it's trustworthy, right? So we say, okay, we're going to trust you, God, until we get to a place where we see, perhaps, which never happens because his nature never fails, but that he would lack trustworthiness, right? So as long as they are in trust, then you actually gain trust in them. And it's easier to trust in them. And how, I think of Jesus, how I love you, how I love you more and more. It says oh, for grace to trust you more, right? So the idea here that he is trustworthy. And I heard this, I got to give credit where credit's due. Ken Russell, who is our district superintendent, we were talking about this discussion about trust. And I've often said that trust is the most expensive commodity out there, because you get money, you lose money, you gain trust, you lose trust. Getting that trust back it's a lot harder than getting money back, for sure. All right. So the idea, but he said this, and it was so powerful. He said that trust and suspicion are on a seesaw, a teeter-totter, so to speak. So that when trust is high, suspicion is low. But when trust is low, suspicion is high, right? So that's where God is trust off the chart. You don't even see the hand anymore. So that means that this hand, suspicion, should really be right off the chart that way, right? So to trust God. So that's the idea of faith here. So let me talk about what faith is not, okay? Faith is not blind. Faith is not believing whether or not I'm going to get through all my notes in 12 minutes. So faith, okay, what faith is not? Faith is not blind belief, okay? So it's not this head and grounds trust, you know, and I don't know if maybe it's too early for this joke, but how do you embarrass an ostrich? Or sorry, how do you kill an ostrich? See, I can't even tell the joke this early. How do you, let's try this again. I can't even edit this. But how do you kill an ostrich? You embarrass him on concrete. Okay. Wow, what a lead up to that joke. Anyways, but you can't have this blind faith kind of, okay, no matter, I'm just not even going to care about this thing. No, that's not what faith is. Faith is not either belligerent belief, okay? And that's where you just don't have a choice. You have to believe, okay? It's not that. And thirdly, faith is not bullied belief, okay? Where it's like, you cannot doubt, okay? This idea of you cannot doubt. That's not faith. That's coercion. That's like, I don't know, like almost bondage, right? And so true faith has to combat doubt. Let me say that again. Put that in notes if you want. True faith has to combat doubt. You know, this idea of like, oh, well, without a doubt, okay? Without a doubt is about faith, but not belief, okay? It's about faith here, without a doubt here. That it is trusting in God's divine persuasiveness and his persuasion, his promises, his covenants, his will, these answered prayers that we're seeing there. All of those are testimonies of who God is. So when I say God answers prayer, right, prove it, persuade me. It's not up to me to persuade you. God answering prayer is the persuasion in itself. You guys are sticking with me. Okay, that's good. We're going here. Okay, let me read. A faith-inspired life is God's incredible gift. Absolutely, Doug. Snoop Dogg, I agree with you. Okay, that is absolutely true. A faith-inspired life is God's incredible gift. It's a gift to you. It actually is. It's even the gift of faith. Now that is a supernatural kind of thing. I only experienced it that I know of one time. It was like a one time I was like, wow, like I just really believe, and it happened to be when, you know, Rosanna attends the church where it happened. I don't know if Rosanna was aware of it at the time, but like where that guy died, right? And so that's a whole story. A guy was dead for 42 minutes, but for some reason I was like, this guy's not going to stay dead. I don't know where it came from, but it's that supernatural gift of faith, right? So I want to get on this verse here, this passage, where we see here Jesus talking in Mark chapter 9. And hopefully we'll get this done. Where it says, how long, in verse 21, it says, how long has this been happening to him? Okay, talking about this situation here. Jesus asked his father about the child. From childhood, he said. And many times it has thrown him into fire or water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. If you can do anything, if just throwing it out there like a lob ball, just if you can do anything. Jesus said to him, if you can, everything is possible for the one who believes. Immediately the father of the boy cried out, I do believe. Help my unbelief. I do believe. Guess what that word is? Patho. Persuasion. I am persuaded. I am. Literally, what is being said is, I do believe God's divine persuasions. Help me where I do not believe God's divine persuasions. That's what is being said here. So notice, God's divine persuasions never change. They're there. It's about our interaction with the truth of who God is in his character. Okay? What changes is really our response to God's promises. So when we lack faith, it's because we are choosing not to trust in what is trustworthy, which is God's divine persuasions. Okay? So now that we're kind of looked at that, let's see if in these next few moments, I can skip over maybe a couple of things, but let's look at a couple of verses here, because maybe these are common verses that you've heard, but maybe now it's going to shift a bit how you view them. Okay? So it says in Hebrews 11, verse 1, it says, now faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. It is the proof, the evidence of what has been God's character, even though it is not yet seen yet. So you see, believing God's promises is expecting what is not yet to actually become. That's what faith is. So it is believing in who God is, that God will continue to be who God is, and he will be able to step in, and what is not yet will now become, as a testimony, right? As proof of his character. What were these these answers to prayer? Testimonies. They were proof of God's character. Oh, I love this stuff. Okay, 1 Corinthians 2, 4, and 5, where it says, my speech, is Paul speaking, and he says, my speech and my preaching were not with, catch this, persuasive words of wisdom. Okay? They were not persuasive words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power. It was not me talking, it was me showing you the Spirit's power. And it goes on in verse 5 to say, so that your faith, ding, might not be based on human wisdom, but on God's power. The the burden of proof is on God's character, his power, his stepping into those situations. So how do we build up our faith? When we recognize, which is the truth, because there's so much of what, wait a second, that's a testimony right there of God's grace, the fact that I'm breathing. So it becomes this thing where we see the proof of what God has done and is doing. Okay? And last verse we're going to look at, ding, okay? 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Right? That's what leads us here. What guides us, what leads us, okay, is not belief. It's not belief. It's trust. It's trusting. It's believing that he will continue to be who he is. So, look at this. I'm almost able to pull this off. How can we circle this back in? It's great. It's great and all to have faith. But remember, just like Anne pointed out earlier, this is not about us solely having the faith, but how do we conduct the faith? How do we become a conduit of faith for others? Okay, well, I got thinking about that. As I said, my daughter and granddaughter were here for pretty much a week, and loved having them here. It was just really great. The house has never been more loud. Is having Rory and Tristan here, and Chrissy. It's always awesome. I love when Tristan and Chrissy, it gets emotional, but I love seeing when Chrissy and Tristan get together, because they really just are sisters, and so it's just like, oh, the love that they have there. But Noah, who's just over 4 months old, we're learning who's teaching who. We're learning what makes her laugh and what doesn't make her laugh, right? So I'll be making these faces, and I'm watching Noah, and she's like trying to. The one thing is, I stick on my tongue, and you can see her, and I know that it's happening because she'll just be like looking at me and the big eyes. So like I can't even make the eyes big enough. She's just looking at me with these big, dark eyes, and she just and I can see her going like that. And you can see her just trying to stick this tongue out, and it's like, and she won't do it until I start doing this. So I recognize that I'm showing her something that she is now trying to mimic, right? So she's learning how to function. So Christians of all shapes and sizes, that, remember, this is about discipleship. Discipleship is not about bettering ourselves. Discipleship is a process of our bettering others. Ooh, I've never said it that way. Someone put that in there so I won't forget it. That discipleship is really our bettering others. So there is an emphasis on what God is doing in us, but it actually then betters others. And 2 Timothy 2:2 would be a great example on that. So this bettering us to better others. So Christians, or even non-Christians, are going to be looking to us to learn how to function. How do I pray? How do I trust? And so they're watching this and wondering how this is going to work with that. So our trust, our belief, our faith in who God is, okay, will determine how we should live, and then that will cause others to learn to mimic that. Oh, that person trusted that God would heal that little child in the NCU, and now that child's no longer in the NIC unit, but now home. Well, maybe I can pray the same thing for my child, or pray for something different. You see, it begets it. The persuasion was not, you didn't persuade them to believe. God's faithfulness now becomes the persuasion for others to believe. That, my friends, is what faith is. Okay, it's 7:00. Let me just say this here. First step. I always like to end with the first step here. The first step for this week here is, I want you to ask yourself, what are you currently unbelieving in or non-believing in that has to shift? Because your decision to not believe, ask yourself, is it based on who God is or based on my unbelief? So God, yes, I believe, but help me where I unbelieve. So if you believe in the sense that you know God is able, well, then God is still able. And I want you to change that. And this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I don't normally say this, but send me a direct message when that shift happens and God answers a prayer. I am believing right now for testimonies where you are going to say, okay, I'm going to shift the way that I am trusting. And then I want to be able to share with you next week about the step-ins where God did that, where you changed your way of thinking. God didn't change, but your situation changed because of how you viewed it. Let's build up the church, our family, to next week as we talk about these things. Until then, can't wait to see you next week. Next week is going to be the last. I know you can read ahead, 2 more words or 3 words, and you'll know what it is. But then we also on Sunday have the last version of Jesus' coolest questions that he ever asked. And then we have a cool thing happening the week after, but I'll talk to you about that on Sunday. And then we start a new series in June. I cannot wait to be able to tell you more about that. But anyways, God bless you guys. Have a great and wonderful day. Have faith in what God can do. Bye now.